This program is brought to you by the Media Liberty Alliance Foundation in cooperation with OBBM Network TV, bringing citizen-led, creative local media to the forefront of local communities to foster a greater understanding of constitutional liberty and appreciation of what makes us truly free, starting with you and me.
Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you're updated each time fresh content comes out. And thank you for being part of the Zach Ratliff Show. The Zach Ratliff Show is brought to you by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Texas, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org. Hello and welcome to the Zach Ratliff Show. I'm Zach. This is Josh. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing well this morning.
Josh Davis, I should say.
Yes.
I expect everybody to know you. Hey, man, it's been Josh and I. When did we? I guess we first talked a couple weeks ago.
I believe it was. Yes,
and have seen each other at a couple of events since then. And you're running for Bowie County Judge.
Yes, sir.
And so I guess I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your time. And I know you're a busy guy, so
I appreciate you having me this morning.
Oh no, sure. Well, let's take the time. There are going to be people listening that are like, why is this guy judge? Who is this guy? What's the back? So just kind of fill us in. Let's just talk about who you are and all those things. When I first talked to you, I was in line. I'd gotten to my daughter's school to pick her up early and had time just to sit there. And then, man, we had a great conversation. So let's just kind of go through it. Just tell us about you, man.
Fantastic. And this is kind of one of the hardest things that I've had a conversation with people over the years of when you're running for a political office, wanting to serve, is that you have to kind of come out of your own comfort zone.
Right.
And it's like, you've got to talk about yourself. And if you're a humble person, that makes it a little bit difficult at times, because if I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with somebody that I'm trying to get to know, I'm going to ask them about them. And, hopefully it's a two-way conversation there. But then when you're out there and, as they call it, you're stumping, you're on the campaign trail, it's like, okay, I've got to talk about me now. And it was difficult at first to try to go, okay, well, here's what I think. Here's what I would like to do. I would like to get some feedback from you guys and see if our ideas are lining up, and go from there. And
and that's right. Anytime you're going to have a conversation, nobody wants to talk to the person that just talks about themselves.
That's right. That turns people off quickly.
But then all of a sudden everybody's like, okay, just talk about yourself.
Right.
And so that's hard. Well, but you're from the Texarkana area.
I am absolutely born and raised in Texarkana. I'll just start from the beginning.
Yeah, let's do that.
If that's good with you. Let's see. My father, he was, I just recently lost my dad.
Oh, I hate to hear that.
He passed away in June. Made it to 94 years old, though.
That's a good run.
That's a good run. I'm hoping some of the DNA or genetics might have carried over on that. We'll see what happens.
94. What year is that? Put him born in
19 and 30. So
that's what I was thinking. That's how
growing up.
That's when my grandfather was born.
Exactly. So a child at the end of the Great Depression.
Right.
So he saw things come full circle, and I know that he instilled a lot of his values and beliefs into his son. I'm the only son. I do have a sibling. I've got a younger sister. My parents were later in age when we came along as children. I don't think we were, it
wasn't the plan.
No, it wasn't. It's kind of like, whoa, okay, so now we're going to be parents. And that made it kind of interesting, growing up, because my dad was also retired Air Force.
Okay.
He had served 20 years in the Air Force and retired out as a major. So, definitely, had that military background to him, and not always just the fun guy to be around.
Well, some of those guys, my grandfather's one of my
favorite people in the world and was, but born in 1930, and
Yes.
those guys lived a hard life.
They
It was a lot different than it was. And some of those guys, and they loved you and they cared for you, but they were hard men.
They were. They don't. When you hear that, they don't make them like they used to anymore. That describes that era of generation. That they were tough.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So anyway, Dad was here, Mom was here, and
exactly. So Mom was a school teacher. She taught public school.
Okay.
In Texarkana, Arkansas. But about the time that I believe I was around 7 or 8, my parents got a divorce.
Okay.
And so that kind of made things interesting. Childhood.
I understand
so
that.
On and so forth. But everything, as far as it came to the children were concerned, they did their best to try to co-parent and things like that. And so still got to spend a lot of time with, both parents, and kind of went from there. But no, Dad was, after he had retired from the military, he had gotten into some real estate, some investing, farming, things like that. And so I remember as a childhood having an interesting, still adventurous childhood, and getting to spend time with both parents. It had its pros and its cons. And so definitely, I can remember as a child going out to the farm with my dad. And, to me, that was like, oh, wow, this is great. This is every kid's dream. You get to go riding the tractor with him.
Yeah.
Doing riding in the truck hauling grain. We did row cropping. So
okay, that's what I'm about to ask. What kind of farming were you guys doing?
We were raising rice, wheat, and soybeans. And the stuff back then, when you think about it, I laugh today, and I was like, if we were in the generation that we are today, and they saw some of the stuff that my dad got away with, raising a child at the time, they would have thrown him under the jail, because it was my job. And when you're running a family farm, you don't have unlimited funding.
That's right.
Everything's pretty tight, and you're making it from one season to the next on your equipment, just getting by.
Right.
And so kind of the things like today where you've got the DOT inspections and stuff like that, they kind of weren't, the same as they were in the early 80s. And, so there were some sketchy things, and it was like the old Mack truck that we would haul our grain to Miller Bowie in.
Right.
The brakes weren't just that great on it. And so I had a job sitting in that right seat, and I had this like chunk of sawed off wood. It was bigger than I was as a kid, but every time Dad would get the truck stopped through downshifting and blowing the air horn a lot, you know, if there was a slight incline, I already knew my job was to hop out of this 18-wheeler, old Mack truck, shimmy down, throw the block under the tires to keep the truck from rolling backwards until the light would change or whatever we were in started moving forward again. And then it was also my job to get out and jump out there between those big, massive tires that were bigger than I was and snatch the block and somehow catch the truck and throw the block in,
get back in.
And I was like, that was just cool to me. I was like, man, but if you saw that today, you'd go, somebody's going to prison over that.
That's exactly right. I learned to drive a standard. My grandfather taught me, I don't know, I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and it was in the sands of a watermelon field, right?
Exactly.
I pull the truck up, the guys are loading the watermelons,
Yes.
and then, of course, don't let it die.
No,
don't let it. But it's sand.
Exactly. And it's a standard, so you could stall it out real easy.
But the same type thing, and even then watching my dad work in the farm with my grandfather, and just seeing all that, and that'll shape you when you see. But I know exactly. My cousins and I still joke about if one of us put a picture online or something of one of our trailers, and we'll send each other text messages. Look like you've got all the lights and the license plates on that trailer. Wow. Like what kind of crazy talk is that?
Yeah. That is. It's like if you got lights on there and a plate, you're like, oh well, I'm overachieving today.
So anyway, so you guys did some grain and some rice.
We did. We got into that, and at one time we had another farm up in Ben Lomond, Arkansas. Highway 71, we called that the Winters Valley Farm, and that was prior to the parents' divorce. And as I've been told, is that divorces are not financially conducive for people.
That's the rumor anyway.
That's what I hear. And so at that point in time, there was one of the farms that was sold off, and so that was one of the farms that got sold off.
Okay.
And he chose to keep the one that was out here in Miller County off of the Interstate 30 close to Red River. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we did all of our row cropping. Still have the farm today.
Still doing it. Okay.
Absolutely.
A little bit different operation at this point, I imagine.
Different, no doubt. And I'll jump into kind of where we transitioned to today a little bit later. But yeah, I can remember the most horrific thing I think I remember as a child prior to my parents' divorce was Dad was, again, going back to where you didn't have the funding. You know, you had to make things do, and
Right.
you couldn't have equipment at both farms. You had to, you know,
Right,
one of
that's
your
right.
biggest pieces of equipment would be a combine, you know, that did your harvest. So
Yeah.
I remember.
And they don't give those away.
Oh my goodness, they didn't back then, and they definitely don't today.
No, that's exactly right.
I saw online, I try to keep up with the prices and stuff on things. And one of the pastimes we used to do would be go to Idabel and go to the equipment auctions
Right.
and see what things were selling for. That's what, whenever I was farming, we did in the wintertime to keep, you know, the guys, the hands working, is we'd always redo a tractor over the wintertime and then, sell it in the springtime. And it was something we could keep everybody working and occupied, and
Right.
food on the table for a couple of families there.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then that was Dad would have to drive the combine back and forth, you know, up and down Highway 71
Yeah.
north there, which was, it's still a little sketchy today, but back
Especially
then it
coming from
was-
Ben Lomond.
Coming from there back to Highway 108 out there, it was a little, yeah. And so there was a day that he had finished his harvest. Luckily, I was not with him. He had pulled out on the Highway 71 there, and there's basically right up there before it hits what they call Penny Hill. It's kind of a blind curve, and the pulpwood trucks coming to the paper mill would come down through there. And again,
They say that's the most dangerous thing in Arkansas is a pulpwood truck.
oh my goodness. Well, he met up with one of them one day. He had come out onto the highway, had a slow moving triangle on the back, everything going on flashers, heading back to Texarkana, and a pulpwood truck that you can only assume how fast it was going to hit him from the back end on the combine. Just obliterated the combine. I don't know how he survived. It wound up breaking his neck, breaking his back, and
Wow.
Did some damage to the poor little guy that was in the pulpwood truck. I know it shot him through the windshield, and that was one of those. Dad was like, "Well, there was my miracle right there." I was like, "Yeah, I remember you being in traction for about 6 months there."
Yeah.
After that, and but again, goes back to that generation. Those guys
They're hard to kill.
they were hard to kill. You know, he made it through Korea and then made it through the pulpwood truck, and Lord only knows however other many lives he was on.
my dad tells a story about when my dad was born in '66, and so he tells a story about asking my grandpa, who was born in '30, that he goes, well, did the water go different ways down the drains when you were in Korea? And he says, my grandpa goes, I was trying not to die. I didn't
We
have time.
to pay attention to the physics over here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So anyway, you grew up in the farming, and,
yes.
and then still part of your life.
It actually is to this day. I'm not doing it hands on anymore. Had a gentleman up until the last few years that I was in charge of the operation who was a neighbor, and that's unfortunately today, when you look at it on the national level, as hard as it's become for farmers to survive, if you're not farming tens of thousands of acres, then you're a little farmer.
Right.
And of course, back then, you know, coming up with my dad, you know, we were farming. We had 1,000 acres in Miller County. That was considered a big family
big farm, yeah.
You know, and about 15 to 1,800 at the Winters Valley up there.
Right.
And so we thought we were pretty.
That's big time.
It was big.
Yeah.
But today, if you're not farming 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 plus acres, and you know have 50 guys working with you, you know you're just you're spinning your wheels.
But it's funny you say that. We hunt up in, or used to, we hadn't been, but anyway, lease land up in Kansas.
Right.
And then the people that own it, you would see these operations come in when it came time to bring their combines in and everything. They'd come in from all over the country hauling in these combines. I mean, it's an organization. And of course, they're putting GPS on those things that, and so then they're just, but that's what they do. They bring in those guys to harvest, and they go on and get the next field and get the next field. And it's an industrial type situation as opposed to a man and his family.
That's right.
Running it. It's a whole different thing than what people think of when you think of farming.
It transitioned that way, and that's kind of where it is you adapt to survive. And that's a lot of new businesses came from that model
Right.
A lot of the mom and pops were downsizing or getting bought up.
Right.
And of course you see what's going on now is you've had a lot of overseas money coming in and purchasing agricultural land. And
Well, and even, I do real estate. Even in the real estate, you see that here locally, you've seen maybe out-of-state buyers that are funded internationally.
Yes.
I mean, it's a scary deal.
you start trying to follow the dots, and it's like, where does this actually lead to? But that's a whole nother conversation right there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get off of where we were going with this, but that was an incredible childhood, getting to see the the good times and the bad times as well with that, because it's like they say in farming, it's feast or famine. You're going to have a good year or you're going to have a really bad year. There's not a lot of in between. So it taught me a lot as a child about budgeting, what you've got to do to save for those rainy days when they come, because you will have a crop failure. There's no doubt about that. We can't control the weather, and that's another big factor. So, I jumped into it, but I'm skipping around a little bit.
No, that's
fine. Growing up, it was interesting. I've talked a lot about my dad. I'll talk a little bit about my mom too. Again, school teacher, and went through Arkansas Side School, public education over there. Got to Arkansas High, and in Arkansas back then, they didn't start you in high school until you were 10th grade.
Okay.
So you went to the junior high for 9th, 8th, and 7th grades, and then you went to the senior high for 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Okay.
My mom was an 11th grade English teacher. Now, before I get any further, there were about 7 other 11th grade English teachers at Arkansas High.
Okay.
And so I made it through, 10th grade, and I was like, all right, that wasn't bad. I figured out the ins and outs. It's like, okay, I do something, and then by 3rd period, my mom's going to know that I've done something.
Yeah, she's on to
And then by 4th period, before even lunch, I'm in trouble, So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Well, learned how to navigate around that. And then 11th grade came around. And we, everybody was always curious back then, what classes do you have? What period? What lunch? Are you A, B, or C? And I was like, okay, everything's looking good. Whoa, hang on. Houston, we've got a problem right here. How in the world? I thought there were laws against this, How did I get put in my mom's 11th grade English class? Aren't there like several other teachers around?
Right.
To do that? That's kind of when I was like, okay, let's go talk to an official about this. I went and talked to the guidance counselor. I remember going in, and I was like, Mr. Kyle, he was one of our Boy Scout leaders and everything else, been to Philmont with us, dude.
Right.
I was like, how'd you do me this way? He just kind of leaned back and he was like, well, it is what it is, Josh. I was like, again, don't we have some kind of protections in place to keep something like this from happening? He's like,
messing up my groove here, buddy.
Completely messing things up for me. He's like, he saw the humor that I didn't see in it.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, we went through Mom's 11th grade English class. That was interesting.
She just put it on you?
She did.
Yeah.
It was always like, you're going to, I was like, oh, okay.
Well, you had to earn it, so that's good.
We did. We made it through. We survived. We're here today. So,
okay.
No, she was, great lady. Great lady. Loved my mom. Actually, after that, I kind of wanted to, after I graduated high school, I graduated in 1996.
Okay.
And so I was, at the time, you're pondering life. You're
Right.
like, what are we going to do right now? What's next? Where do I feel like I'm being led? Where is my heart? And I know most high school students, that's the last thing that they're thinking about, at least, from my experience.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're either we're going to go off, parents are going to pay for us to go to university. We're going to have a party time. And I was like, you know what? I told mom and dad, they were like, do you want to go off to university right now? I was like, let me just be honest with you. If I do that, I'm probably going to waste your money. So,
Right.
I'm looking at a different path. And my dad, he was like, well, if you don't go there, you're going to go to the military. And I was like, well, he's like, he's always instilled, a strong sense of service. And I was
Right.
like, I don't know if that's really the route for me. And he was like, well, what do you mean you don't know? Dad's got a direct question, and I need to give him a very direct answer. Seemed like very fast, too. I was like,
Yeah. You need to come up with one quickly.
I did. And I was like, Dad, I want to serve. I said, but I just don't want to do, I don't think,
You weren't for that.
I love honor, I just have so much respect for the men and women that did choose that path.
Right.
That's why we enjoy our freedom today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I told Dad, I said, maybe if this doesn't work, then I would like to look at that. He's like, all right, well, spit it out. What are you over here thinking about? I said, I want to be a fireman.
Okay.
He said, well,
Which is service.
in my eyes, I was looking at it the same way. I was like, it's a different type of service, but it's a service,
Right.
to my community right here. And he was like, all right, so what's your plan? I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I've done a little research on it. I said, they won't hire you at a city fire department until you're 21 years old. I said, so I've got to figure out some stuff in between, now and then. And he's like, well, yeah, it means you got to stay out of trouble too. And I'm like, yep, first and foremost, can't be out here hanging out with knuckleheads and
Right.
doing knucklehead stuff. And, he's like, yeah. He said, so what's your play? I was like, well, I said, there's a volunteer fire department over here in Miller County, right close to our farm. I said, I'm actually wanting to go out there and get a little bit more information from those guys, see if this is something, I hate to say try before you buy, but kinda like,
great opportunity.
Let's look into this. And went out there and talked to those guys, and they were super receptive. I mean, they were like, hey, the younger, we're trying to get the next generation involved in service. And, these guys were just, they were awesome as far as like, who wants to mentor a teenager,
Right.
Especially one that's trying to figure life out.
Right.
They were awesome, amazing. I'll never forget those guys for as long as I live. The chief out there, his name was Joe Martin. He's still here with us. But, I mean, he just really, he was so encouraging, so much support. Started out with, kind of mapping it out. Here's what you need to do. You need to start looking into going to schools, going and getting training. And next thing I know, I'm signed up out here at TC.
Okay.
Going through EMT school. And it's like, you know what? Get all these certifications before, it's just
Right,
going to
yeah.
make you more attractive. I was
Right.
like, that makes sense. So did that, started volunteering with those guys and seeing kind of how different scale, same thing, but
Right.
seeing how that worked out. So sure enough, next thing I know, a couple of years had passed between that. I'm back to, I need a little spending money.
Yeah, that's right.
The
Gotta
volunteers
live.
is exactly what that is. It's volunteer. And so there wasn't any funding coming in while I was trying to figure this out too.
Right.
And so, of course, here I go. I'm like, all right, Dad, and he's like, I don't care whose son you think you are. You're not getting anything for free without working. I was like, that checks out. So he's like, well, you can come out here. I always need help on the farm, And so I was back there, I hate to say killing time, but I wasn't at the time. To me, I didn't feel like I was really learning a great deal by walking rice levees and kicking water moccasins and pulling up coffee beans.
Right.
You know, but that it was putting a little money in my pocket so that, you know, maybe I could, you know, go out and do something fun on the weekend.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, we move along there, and one day, sitting there and hanging out at the fire department over there in Miller County in Mandeville is actually where it was.
Yeah, okay.
And Joe comes in one day, and all these guys, you know, they work full-time jobs and come in and volunteer on the site, you know, whenever needed.
Right.
I was up there doing something, you know, sweeping out the fire station, washing the fire truck, whatever needed to be done. Joe pulled in, and he worked for GTE at the time.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, he said, they're giving the civil service test in, you know, a couple of weeks. I was like, well, Joe, I'm only 20 years old. He's like, you can take it when you're 20. He said, as long as that you're 21 by the time that they offer you a job. I was like, great. He's like, in worst case, you know, he said, you get a little trial test on the civil service exam. I was like, sounds good. Winner to me. So
Yeah.
I go and sign up for this thing, go down to City Hall, get the application, and it's, you know, it looks like a book. You're like,
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're going to fill this out. They want to know everything about you, who you know, kindergarten teacher was, what your blood type.
Yeah, everything they can know.
Exaggerating it, but it was a lot of information. And so filled all that out and thought, okay, we'll give it a shot. And so then they notify you, okay, you know, test is going to be given at North Heights over on 35th Street.
Okay.
Show up at the cafeteria at, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what to expect. And back then, you know, you didn't really have Google wasn't a
Yeah,
thing.
you couldn't just pull your phone out of your pocket and look up what to do.
And go, hey, what do I expect for civil service? I remember, you know, going out to Books A Million and going, let me browse through here and see if they have civil service for dummies or anything like that. And
Right.
I couldn't find a whole lot of information, so I was like, okay, here we're going to go give it a shot. I walked in that morning, and it was like 8 o'clock, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And I look around, and there's like 100 people in here to take this test. And I was like, oh my gosh, are they here for something else, or are we all here for the same thing?
Right.
We're all there for the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, how many spots are they hiring for? Well, we think 2. I was like, ooh,
Okay.
the odds here just got real interesting.
Yeah, get a little hairy.
Yeah, it did. So sat down, went through, and I was like, okay, we'll just give it our best shot. And turned it in. Don't know really what you made yet on it. And it's like, all right, man, we're done. Call it a day. I don't know what
thanks,
to do
go
now.
home.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. So,
Right. Yeah.
literally, that's kind of the way it all happened.
Yeah.
Is a couple of weeks later, they were like, well, we've scored the test, and, you know, you scored like an 88 or an 89 on it. I'm thinking, well, was that good, bad?
Yeah.
Or how
Sounds
did I
like a
do?
B, but
Yeah, I'm good. I've been
unless it's out of 90, then it's an A.
if I was in my mom's class right now, I'd be stoked with that score.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So, yeah, they're like, all right, we'll show up. Next thing we've got is you've scored high enough that, you know, you get to try out for the agility part of the test. And I was like, okay, all right, let me see what we're up against. All right, yeah. And so they give us the date, and we show up out there at the old station number 4 by the airport. I'm looking around, and I'm going, man, I am seeing a lot of military PT outfits out here. You know,
Right.
I'm seeing, you know, every branch is being represented, and these dudes are stout, man.
But you've been working on a farm.
Yeah, I've been working on a farm, so it's a different type of, you know, yeah. But I'm like, okay, there's a dude with an army shirt on. I'm like, hey, man, so what's your story? He's like, I'm a ranger, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So yeah, there's this dude over here that's a ranger, and we've got several other people that have shown up to take this test, and I'm a talkative kind of guy, you know,
Right.
just kind of chatting it up with people, and
Yeah.
here we go. We make it through, and everybody's doing all their agility stuff, and I'm like, all right, yeah, that was a little bit tougher than I thought it was going to be,
Right.
but we're still here, and that goes forward, and then you go, another 2 or 3 weeks passes by, and you're in that just, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen. And people are asking you questions. Your family's like, dude, did you just go out there and screw it up royally or what?
Yeah, why hadn't you heard anything?
What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm waiting. This is the first time I've ever tried this.
Yeah, right.
I don't know the process. And so a few weeks later, you get the phone call, and they're like, hey, you scored high enough on your civil service. You scored high enough. And I don't know what enough was. I just
know you got it.
Enough was enough.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were like, all right, now you can come on in and we're going to do a sit down with you. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So that was my first real big boy experience, I guess you could say, was getting the call down to fire administration at City Hall. And I walked in again, not knowing what to be prepared
just
for,
blind.
just blind. And it's like you go into the conference room, and if you can imagine, you've got the conference table that's just like 12 feet wide, and then there's
daunting.
like 8 chairs on the other side with random people that you have half of them are in uniform, and then half of them are like in, sports jackets.
Yeah.
And you're going, whoa. And then there's the one chair on the other side, and you're like, oh, I bet that's where they want me to sit.
Yeah, that's for me.
That's for me. And so you sit down, and it's like, hey, welcome to your, where you're going to run the gauntlet.
Right.
Nothing's all out of bounds. We're going to ask you everything and anything, and depends on how you answer it and what we think about it after you leave is whether or not we're going to offer to go any further with this.
Right.
And that was truly what it was. And so for a 20-year-old, that's going to EMT school, that's been working on the farm and kicking water moccasins, I'm like, oh, this is big time.
Yeah,
right here.
it's big boy interview.
We're doing it right.
Yeah.
So, again. Yeah, and they don't give you any indication while you're doing it. They're going to smile and nod.
Right.
And just maybe someone will elaborate and go, can you explain further on that? And then you're like, oh man, did I mess this up?
Yeah.
You go further, and then you get up.
I feel like I've been interviewed by some of those same people.
Same people. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
And if you get a handshake at the end, you're like, that works. I guess that's good. So, again, you leave this one, and then everybody's like, all right, so how did that go? And I'm like, man, I can't even remember half the stuff they asked.
Yeah, I don't even know.
My mind is just cooked right now.
Yeah.
And you don't hear anything. This one went on for longer than the other ones did. It went on for a couple of months, and I'm just like, well, I'm back out here on the farm, and
Still working.
I don't know. I get a phone call one day, and it's one of the battalion chiefs, and he's like, are you still interested in the fireman position? I'm sorry, firefighter position. And I said, yeah. He's like, well, come on down, and we're going to go ahead and give you a station assignment. And if you're interested, and I was just like, oh my God, this was like 4 or 5 months after that. And I was like, well, I do have a question, what happened? How did I fall on the list of those, 100 people that applied? They were like, well, we hired 3. We were only going to hire 2, but we wound up hiring 3 people this year, and you're our 3rd one. I was like, okay. That'll work for me. That works for me. So they give me a start date. I'll never forget. June the 6th of 1999 was when I was to first report to duty. And my station assignment was Station 3, which for those of you guys that don't know Station 3, that's College Hill.
Okay.
In Texarkana, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is cool. I know where that is. It's over on Division and Ferguson. Only thing I cared about was that it had a big red fire truck parked in the garage. I was like, that's right. Awesome. This rocks. So they go ahead and tell me to report to duty. I haven't been to the fire academy yet, but they were like, you've been a volunteer, so you've kind of got, how to put on some gear.
Right.
And, that's about to, you know how to, try not to get yourself hurt or injured until we can get you into the fire academy.
Right.
So I got over there, met at the time they were lieutenants. They hadn't become captains yet. So I met my lieutenant, and I met our engineer that drove the fire truck, and I was the guy in the back seat that just needed to be quiet and learn how everything works, just soak it in. And I'll never forget that my first day we had 2 structure fires, and I was just like, oh wow, oh
That's real life.
This is real stuff. You know, this is for real, and I loved every minute of it. And next thing I know, there, you know, a couple of months pass by, slot opens up at the fire academy, and I'm packing my bags and heading off to the fire academy and just getting ready to start an entire new life there, and learned so much. That was a great part of growing up right there, and that's what I kind of, you know, going through that, I was able to have conversations with my father. And it's like, you know, there was some bonding there, some identification, you know, and it was like, you know, what you're going through there is very similar to like what we went through in basic, and
so he can make it.
That was kind of like, it was all checking the boxes there, and yeah, that was kind of how I got started out in the fire service.
Well, then how long were you in the fire service?
I retired after 20 years.
Okay.
So, of course, the great thing with the fire service, and I know they've recently changed their scheduling, and now it's kind of, you know, I don't have an abacus to figure it out, but those guys have got it all figured out.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they know how they're doing it. But when I went to work there, it was you worked 24 hours on duty and you had 48 hours off duty.
Right.
So it was perfect for, you know, trying to, you know, do, as everyone said, most firefighters had a side hustle or a side gig, you know, something that they were doing. And I quickly found out, I got married shortly thereafter becoming a firefighter, to my wife, Mandy. She was Mandy Reel before she became Mandy Davis. And everybody always asks, you know, were we high school sweethearts? And I was like, you know, I would have liked that to have happened. I really was shooting for that. And at the time, you know, she was not buying it. And I actually
had to let it cook a little bit.
She did, literally. And what I'm going to tell you next really kind of ties in with the whole cooking thing, because I met her when I told you that we started high school over there in 10th grade. Well, prior to that, there were two junior highs in Arkansas. You had College Hill and North Heights.
Oh, okay.
And so we had been separated. She was College Hill and I was at North Heights.
Right.
So our paths had not crossed growing up in our younger years. So it was kind of like when everybody got to 10th grade, the two schools merged together, and then you were like, whoa, these are new people.
Yeah, we got a whole new group here.
Whole new group. And I remember sitting in 10th grade in Coach Burdine's history class, and I don't know how I made it there early one day, but I made it in, found me a pretty decent seat, I thought.
Now, let me pause you. Denny Burdine, friend of my family.
Really?
And friend of the show. He's been on here multiple times.
Small world.
Yeah. So, he comes on as our historian, government expert.
I learned a lot in his class.
Yeah. Anyway, so sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
just wanted to point out for when you know, we've got listeners here, but we're nationwide at this point,
exactly,
and international listeners as well. And so when they hear Burdine, that's the same Burdine that now comes in here and talks about showing cows and doing all that. Anyway, continue. So Coach Burdine, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to tie it together for everybody that's not with me.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there in his classroom, and this is first day, you know, and we're all like, okay, all right. And I see this young girl walk in, and I was like, oh my gosh,
hey,
where has she been?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I can remember what she was wearing to this day.
Yeah.
She had on some boots, some blue jeans, a little button down shirt, and a plaid sports jacket, and I was like, man, and then she had that black curly hair, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get to know her.
Yeah.
And so I finally worked up the courage about half a year into, you know, the school.
The way it
goes. And it's like, okay, you know, back then, you didn't have cell phones. You had to like pick up the landline and call, and you're wondering if their dad's going to answer the phone.
You know, that's the way it always went, too.
Always. You know, it's like, okay, man, you got to work up some courage here.
Yeah.
It's not like today where they can just shoot I don't know all the forms of social, but it's a lot easier. And I could be wrong. I don't know.
You're not
every
worrying about
generation has their struggles, but yeah, I was worried about Dad going, who's this? What do you want to talk to my daughter?
Yeah, what business do you have with this call?
Exactly.
Yeah, what are your intentions, sir?
So you got to be prepared for all that's coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
So I finally I get the courage and I make the call, and I was like, all right, I'm going to ask her, hey, what are you doing? You want to go get a Coke or something sometime?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so our mom answers the phone, and I was like, whew, okay, yeah. Mom got it now. And I was like, hey, Miss Reel, this is Josh Davis from school. Is your daughter Mandy there? Well, yeah, hang on. Okay.
Okay, pass the first hurdle.
Heart's beating real fast.
Yeah.
You can feel it in your throat.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right. She gets on the phone. I was like, hey, I don't know if you know who I am or not. Yeah, I know you. All right. How about we, go grab a Coke or something? Or do you have time to talk? Well, I'm busy right now. I've got something in the oven.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, really? Okay, so you all right. You got to go mow the yard too, and
yeah.
I was like, all right, thanks for letting me down. And I was like, okay. She was like, all right. Now she says to this day that she said, call me back. I don't know if I heard that or not.
Right, you're not sure
I'm not sure that was really conveyed.
Well, what I've learned in my years now is that a lot of times what they think they say and what is said are two different things, Josh. But I'm not gonna accuse her of that.
Exactly. And so I hung up the phone there after we got off, and I was sitting there. I was at my mom, at her house, and she's just kind of over there. She was acting like she was doing something.
She was paying attention,
but she was clocking everything. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, how'd that go? And I was like, well, she had something in the oven. She said, Josh, you just got to let down. You let down easy on that one. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And I was like, all right. So rolled on, fast forward, here we are. That was, I had to try to tie this in to where we were today and this. And so I actually ran into her again prior to getting hired at the fire department when I was actually working with the volunteers.
Okay.
And so I had stopped in. She had her a job. She was going out here to TC as well. And she had a job at the Handy Stop out there in Genoa area.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So she was working counter there, and I was like, let me go in and get a Gatorade one day. It was hot, summertime. And I was like, oh, man, all right, here she is, 3 or 4 years later.
Right.
We've done our separate thing. And I was like, wow, oh, it's you. And she was like, yeah. Zach, I'll tell you, I was gun shy. I was like, all right, I've already been turned down.
That's probably still in the oven.
It is. I was like, all right, what you got in there? I don't know. Anyway, so it took a little time. So I started finding excuse after excuse after excuse to keep returning to, I think I drank all their Gatorade out of stock at the Handy Stop. And they're like, sales are up on Gatorade. And Josh is in here trying to work up the nerve to ask out. Man,
you got a seat full of undrank Gatorade.
Completely. Yeah. And so, she finally agreed. She was like, you come in here a lot? I was like, yeah. And I said, you got a boyfriend or anything?
Yeah.
Well, no, not really. I was like,
okay, here we go.
All right. So here we go. That's how it all got started.
Well, that's awesome.
And so, again, we went to, it started in high school. We never had the opportunity to be high school sweethearts, but we've been married for right at 26 years.
Man, that's awesome.
And, there's no way that I would be where I am without her. She supported me, throughout everything, the fire department. And so, I found myself, here within a year of getting a job, starting a career as a firefighter with a wife. And then shortly after that, we find out that we've got a daughter on the way.
Right.
And, I was like, all right, I got to do, she's going to college, we've got a lot going on. When I was a single firefighter, I thought I was making more money.
Yeah, richest man in the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
When you get married and, you've got tuition and you got a baby on the way, that you're not as rich as you thought you were at one point in time.
Yeah,
And you're
it's like, in high school, you get a job and your parents paying all the bills, and all of a sudden you got all the money. Like, this life thing's easy.
it's simple. It's like you start learning about stuff, and it's like, all right, yeah. And so I had started picking up some part-time shifts with LifeNet on the time, and on your days off, you'd go out there and you'd jump on the ambulance, pull a couple of shifts, Before you know it, that had been rocking on there for a while, and I was like, this is a lot.
You got a lot going.
This is between, riding the fire truck for 24 hours and then jumping off and not letting you turn off everything that you've just done for that 24 hours. You're jumping right back into something that has sirens and lights on it, and it's like, it's another,
Right.
Usually when those people are working, it's because somebody's having the worst day of their lives.
Yeah, and you're not just driving around with the lights on for fun.
No. A lot of people accused us of that going to Dairy Queen. They're like, yeah, we know y'all just.
I promise I've seen it a couple of times.
The Hunger Buster. And,
That's right.
We're like, no, seriously, but yeah, that was a lot going on at the time, and I thought, man, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way, and I had worked so hard to get out of those rice fields and soybean fields at the time, and I went back. Dad's health had not been great. He had gone through bypass surgery and stuff like that. He couldn't get out there and do what he used to do anymore on the farm.
Right.
Things had kind of, he'd sold off some equipment, downsized things.
Just trying to stay afloat, basically.
Pretty much. He was venturing out into other real estate, multifamily projects.
Yeah.
Kind of had ventured away, but still, the farm got everything started with the equipment wise. You could build things and utilize, and you're always trying to spin a plate,
That's
while
exactly
you're doing
right.
stuff. And so I went to Dad one day and I was like, hey, Pops, I was like, raising a baby girl, wow, trying to be a husband, a father, career. I said, it's tough. He's like, welcome to life, son. And I'm like, yeah. I said, but I'm thinking, I said, there's got to be another way. I said, I feel like I'm putting out a whole lot, but it's like, what always got me was, when you would rent versus trying to own. And it's like, I didn't feel like I was building any equity.
Right.
I'm like, I know you got to do that at times, but I was like, man, I need some equity here. I need to start building on a future for my daughter. And so I asked my dad, I said, so what's going on with the farm? He was like, well, right now we just got a couple of cows out there on it, and got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And he says, pretty much the only equipment that's out there is the junk, that didn't bring top dollar when we were getting out of the farm. And I was like, yeah. I said, well, so what would your thoughts be if, say your son wanted to start the farm operation back up again? And he's like, well, how much capital do you have? And I was like, you know the answer to that one right there. I'm like,
you're looking at it.
Let me, see what's in this pocket here. And I promise you it's not much. Mike can buy a Gatorade at the handy stop with what I've got in my pocket. So he was like, yeah. He's like, all right, let me think about it. Like, okay, yeah, sure. Calls me back a couple of days. He's like, yeah. He said, I've had some time to think about this. He said, you're serious? I said, oh, I'm absolutely serious. I said, things are tight right now. I said, so, we need to figure something out quick. He said, all right. He said, I got a proposal for you. Now, Dad's a businessman at this point, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've never known. I don't know if anyone's ever gotten over on him, but it sure wasn't going to be me at this point.
And if they did, they earned it.
He earned every bit of it, 100%. So he says, I'll tell you what. He said, I know that you know the work side of it. He said, you haven't learned the whole business side of it yet. I was like, yeah, I can get out here and sweat with the best of them, hammer it out all day long.
Right.
He's like, yeah, it's going to take that. Plus, he said, I'm going to have to walk you through some stuff. He said, but here's the proposal. He said, I'll go ahead and front you your startup money. I said, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
He said, you're going to have to buy your seed, your chemical, your fertilizer.
Right.
He said,
Fuel.
all of those things are, they don't give them away down there at the co-op. And as you say, the fuel, the diesel. And then, I've got to find a helper. And I don't have just an astronomical budget that I'm working with on, I'm going to do this on my 2 days that I'm away from the fire department.
Right.
And I got to have somebody, who can, during planting and harvest time at least, on the day that I'm away from the fire department.
Right.
So he was like, so here's the deal. He said, I'm going to front you your money for your startup. I was like, awesome. And he's like, but here's the catch. He said, if and when you make a crop, he said, I want 100% of my investment back. I said, fair enough. He said, then I want 50% of whatever the profits are.
So you're not getting paid until it's all paid back.
Yes.
And then you're splitting the rest.
Exactly. And I was like, all right, I'm not in a position to negotiate.
Yeah, right.
I'm just like, here's an opportunity. If I work, I'm thinking American dream. You work hard enough. Dad's
That's right.
already, he pays the taxes on the farm. He's paid the payments. He's done everything and kept it
set
above
you up.
board. Yeah, for, the last 40 years because, again, we're going back to, I had much older parents too. And so he's just given me this opportunity. And I was like, yeah, this sounds great to me. I went home and told Mandy about it. I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, you're probably not going to see a lot of me.
Right.
Just throwing that out there. She's like, hey, do what you got to do. I was like, all right. So here we go. And we did. Went out there and started, negotiating with, this was in a different time too. It was like when you could go to the bank and they would give you a line of credit.
Right.
And you had to learn how to work on, okay, I got a $50,000 line of credit for this year, which in the late 90s, early 2000s,
that's a good line.
That was pretty solid. You're like, okay. And, a lot of stuff was done on a handshake.
Right.
I could go to Miller Bowie and I could say, hey, I need seed, and they're like, all right,
You put it on terms if you had to.
you do. And it's like you pay it when you harvest your crop.
Yeah.
Or you figure something out, if you don't. And so that's where I started learning the whole business aspect of it too. And Dad told me, he said, you know what? He said, it's not up to me. He said, it's up to you. But after you pay me off, he said, I would suggest taking your cut and reinvesting that in your equipment. Because when I started out, like I say, there was a couple old John Deere 4840 tractors out there that were older than I was.
Right.
And they had definitely, I got the engine would turn over and run, but the power shift transmission was slipping. It wouldn't stay, I learned how to rebuild a transmission.
Because you had to.
I had to.
Yeah.
It took me 3 tries to get it right.
Yeah.
But I also had a little line of credit with John Deere, which was Green Line at the time over on Highway 82. A lot of people remember Utah Vardell.
Utah Vardell.
Exactly. He had a radio voice and, liked doing his commercials, but Utah was a good old guy. You could always find him in there sitting on a stool, chewing on some Red Man, friendly, pull up, have a pot of coffee waiting. That was the place right there.
Right.
Grew up cutting my teeth in places and sitting on stools like that.
That's right.
Talking to these old men. I mean, you would learn everything from religion to politics to everything you needed at the tractor counter.
It's funny you say that. My grandfather was a forester, drove a fire plow for the Arkansas State Forestry, but was a farmer. Watermelons big in Hope, Arkansas, and that's where him and Mamaw made their money in the summer was slinging watermelons.
Exactly.
But a group of old guys went to Andy's in Hope every morning, and he'd ride through there. But then I grew up going to horse auctions and doing all that and then same deal there, go to the feed store with him and even or the hardware store was just a hardware store and you go through the bolt bins and then it's like the movie Gran Torino in a way. Then and even with my dad as well. I mean, I don't want to discount his role in my life because my dad's my hero. But even watching him do it and then watching my grandpa do it, and this is how men do business. This is how men talk to each other. This is how men handle things. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. They're life lessons. You know, I often say, if you could take a Washington politician and put them over there at Old Time Burger for breakfast and just let them sit down at that table of men sitting there, there'd be a lot that they could learn.
A lot they could learn and take back and change.
Yeah,
Washington.
That's exactly right.
Oh my gosh, that is, yes. And that I love how we were able to kind of pivot off of that segment right there into that, because I agree with you that, and I'm trying to think, where are places like that? Like you said, you mentioned Old Time Burger.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think, where are places like that now? And there's not as many as there used to be.
No,
unfortunately. And those generations they're dying off on us. And,
Right.
And so but that was part of it. I learned. I went up there and bugged those guys enough to where, you know, they were able to walk me through. They're like, "What'd you do this time?" And I'm like, "Well, see, I didn't put that right there." And they're like, "Well, yeah." I'm pestering them, but I guess they felt sorry for.
They'll help you. They might give you a hard time about it.
Give you a hard time, but they're going to
Yeah.
point you on the right path. And so we did. We got some things. I advanced my mechanical knowledge and skills by doing that. And we made some good crops and did well for several years. We had some bad years too,
Right.
But that kind of transitioned. It carried us on and. Got us to, I call it, I look at my life as like chapters.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a book. And it's like, okay, we're in this chapter. And then it's kind of funny how that, you know, I look at it as, you know, Lord opened another chapter, you know, another door, things that
It builds on each other, although you can't see it sometimes when it's building.
It kind of takes that, you know, looking back and going, yeah, there was definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of doing my thing, you know. I'm rocking along. Life is great. I'm not bothering anybody. Nobody's bothering me.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, I've got my wife. She's getting ready to get her teaching degree, and my daughter. You know, everything's rocking along for her. You know, things are going good at the at fire department. Things are going good at the farm. And then when, you know, we've done the American dream. We've bought our house.
Yeah.
And so we're just elated at our age that, you know, we've bought a house over in Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
You know, and that was my wife's dream. She wanted to be a teacher, and her dream was teach for Pleasant Grove.
Okay.
And so all these things were starting to come to fruition. And, you know, for most people I'm not going to just say at our age, but in their lifetime, the largest investment they make is their home.
I see it. I see it all the time.
Yes, you know more than anybody.
And that's what I have to make sure I don't take for granted is a lot of people, maybe they do it two times or three times, but however, and it doesn't matter the size of that. So however much they're choosing, you're absolutely right. That's the largest amount of money. And that's a big decision.
It is a huge decision. And then that turns in that's a lot of people's nest egg too. It's like, okay, you know, we're putting everything here. And we had done that. We had invested in the American dream, had our home, everything was going great. And one day I'm sitting out there, you know, doing my thing at the farm. We start having, and I noticed some things around the house. I'm like, we're getting a sinkhole in the backyard. What's going on here? I was like, okay. And then I'm doing a little further investigation, and just things I hadn't paid attention to before. And I was like, so I'm getting the sinkhole here. There's sinkhole here. There's what's going on here. Oh, yeah, somebody before me put a French drain back here. Okay, so I'm here. I'm going into farmer mode.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
all
gotta
right,
find this.
I'm looking, and so I start tracing everything back, and I'm like, I've got this galvanized culvert that runs under my driveway all the way up to the street, and that's where the storm drain system's all connected. It's like, okay, so the storm water from the street comes down and is running under my driveway,
washing you out.
Yeah, I didn't build the house. I bought the house. So I didn't know anything. And so I know that, you know, a galvanized culvert has a lifespan and they're going to rot out.
Absolutely.
You know? They didn't use the polyvinyl chloride, the PVC ones.
And you'd been down enough farm roads to see what happens.
I've moved enough water on rice fields to know what happens to those old galvanized culverts there.
Absolutely.
And so I'm going, same thing's going on here. In my backyard, a culvert's failing, my driveway's going to collapse, and everything else is going on. And why? Because I'm draining all the city's stormwater. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. Okay, so here in my fireman mind, I'm thinking, it's an easy solution. Let me just call City Hall and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm carrying all y'all's water up under my property here,
right,
and it's draining out here and going down to the pond, and well, what are y'all going to do to help a guy out here? Because this isn't cool. Well, they're like, well, we'll get back to you on that. I was like, oh, okay, all right. Okay, so it goes on, kind of one of those things that, if it's not happening all the time, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
So, a month or two passes by, we get another heavy rain, and it's like, oh, man, even the thing can't handle the water. And it's like, oh, man, this is not good. I got bubbles popping up in the yard. And
right. It's a problem.
It's getting to be a problem. And I was like, all right, I know how to fix that. I actually have a backhoe. And I was like, I know how to operate.
Got a farm. You're used to fixing these types of situations.
I can get a piece of equipment over here in like 30 minutes, So
right.
I call City Hall. I'm like, let me give them another shot. I'll get a nice lady on the phone and I'm like, can you connect me to who I need to talk to about this? And
right.
Yeah, okay, here we go. And so I talked to this person. They're like, well, you know what? There's easements and right of ways, and we don't have one of those to that. And it's like, well, we don't know what we can do to help you out on this thing. I'm like,
fair enough.
Well, fair enough. I said, you've answered my question. They're like, all right, have a good day. I said, but hang on. I said, hang on. I said, I got a backhoe. I said, I'm going to go out there and get it. I said, my solution is we're just going to close off this storm drain. I said,
I'm about to shut you down.
We're going to stop the hemorrhaging of water coming under my property. Oh, no, you can't do that, Mr. Davis. I was like, really? I said, I thought I owned that property. Yeah, that's where things
I thought you didn't have an easement.
Exactly. I'm kind of back and forth on this thing.
Uh-huh.
They're like, yeah, you can't do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to. They're like, well, if you do, we're going to send some nice officers out there, and they're going to have a little say with you about that.
And you're like, do they know how to drive a backhoe?
They got a
yeah. And every old boy in the country that's ever been around heavy equipment, you got a key.
You got a key. It works all of them. So I hate to say it like this, but what got me involved was because I was like, you got to be kidding me. And,
right.
I've heard a lot of people who have gotten involved in service with politics that have, other motivational factors.
Right. Yours was one to protect your home.
That was my motivating factor, was like, this is my largest investment. This is what, this is my American dream.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I got frustrated. And I remember vividly that after that phone call, I talked to my wife. She always brings me back down, a notch or two. And she's like, we'll figure out another way. We're going to, I was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm over here stewing. I got smoke coming out of my ears. I was like, well, you know what? I've got a field that needs disking right now. I'm going out to the farm and we're going to I remember sitting there and I'm thinking, whatever happened to for the people, by the people, representative form of government. And so I'm like,
just mad.
And I hate to say that, it's my motivating factor, because it wasn't like I just, woke up one day and said, you know what, I need to run for city council.
Right. I've got a problem.
I'm just wanting to do, what you're supposed to do. I had an issue. So, yeah.
Right.
I remember sitting out there and I was standing on, it was when you'd have to put diesel in a tractor. It's up there on the hood and you'd stand up on the tire.
Yeah, that's right.
Balance precariously while you're filling that thing up. And, and it holds 100 gallons. So you're going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
And I was like, I called my wife. I said, hey. She said, yeah. I said, I got an idea. She said, what is that? I said, I think I'm going to run for city council.
Yeah.
She said, what? I said, yeah. I said, I've asked around, and which was also the great thing about being a firefighter, is you learned a lot of the municipal business from one city to the other. I said, it's getting ready to be filing time over here, or opening. I said, do me a favor. I said, can you run down to City Hall and pick up an application for me?
Yeah.
Because I'm in farm clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in some jeans that have some grease stains on them.
Right. Yeah.
We've got. I'm in a t-shirt. I am not looking like the person that needs to.
That's right. Have to be running for City Hall.
Start knocking on doors at City Hall, going, "Hey, where's need to?" Yeah. So maybe she did me a solid on that when she went down there and picked up my application, filled that thing out, and I just thought. I told her. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I just feel like that." They need to hear people.
You're a normal person.
That's it. And just something from, and she was like, you're not cut out for that, right? And I was like, I know I'm not cut out for this. I said, but it's one of those things that if you don't try it. And she's like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I said, worst thing that can happen is I'm going to make some new friends. I said, yeah. First of all, we find out who we're running against and all this. And, you're challenging an incumbent. Nobody knows my name. I'm just Josh, the little firefighter that goes to work every third day over here. I don't make any waves. I stay out of trouble, do my job. I go out to my little farm. Grow some crops, I'm not out there working,
You're not making enemies.
And no, I'm not trying to make enemies either at all. But lo and behold, when I signed up, that's when everything changed. They were like, "Oh, who's this? What's his deal?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm just that pushed me out of my comfort zone."
Right.
I started knocking on doors in my ward and going around and talking to people.
Which ward were you?
I was Ward 6 in Texarkana, Texas. Mm-hmm. So I started, doing the whole grassroots, I don't have any campaign funds. I don't have any, there's not any big people saying, hey, you go out and do this. I'm like, all right, I'm going to wear out some sneakers. And I did. And we literally, my daughter went with me and we knocked on every door in Ward 6 3 times before the election came around.
Man, that's impressive.
It was. And it gave me an opportunity to sit down with people. Mm-hmm. I was amazed at how many times that people would just invite a stranger in and go, hey, and I'm like, I want to hear what your concerns are. Right. What are you dealing with? Have you had issues with your street or your drainage or, what else?
Right.
What are your concerns?
What are some other things being overlooked by?
Exactly. Yeah. That was just, to me, it was the catalyst. It was the spark that ignited that. And then it became a passion.
Yeah.
And, we started going from there. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So there are some concerns about, number one, the ward. There's also concerns about, the direction that the city's going in. There's also some concerns about the finances. There's concerns about everything. So it started really opening my eyes to, much broader.
It's like an onion. As you unpeel it,
it just gets, there's more and more and more. And I was like, wow, okay. We continue running. And let me tell you, jumping in, I have to admire anybody who's willing to sign up, put their name out there, and go through, really what it entails to run for any office.
Oh, and people don't understand until they're there, from what I can tell, is all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is real, and you're opening yourself up to such scrutiny just because people are hard to deal with sometimes.
That's an understatement. You hit the nail on the head, and then when you put yourself out there, it's like fair game.
Right.
Now that you've done that, you're a target.
Yeah.
Your family's a target. It doesn't matter that there's I've seen many people over the years run clean campaigns and run dirty campaigns, and you never know what you're going to experience, and things that I had not, especially being that this was the first rodeo, I wasn't expecting things to happen, like when my wife was a day school teacher at Williams.
Okay, yeah.
And, she had parents coming in, and they're like, aren't you the one married to that fireman? She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, is he crazy? Has he lost his mind? What is he thinking? And just said some of the ugliest, worst, most horrible things. I mean, literally here's my sweet little wife. She's crying,
Right.
At the church,
Yeah.
teaching day school. And that was the thing that I did not expect as far as the side effects or
Just how
repercussions.
ruthless people are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
A lot of times, Josh, to no point.
to no point. Exactly.
I mean, not that I'm calling for it ever.
No.
I mean, look, there have been times in my life where I've been ruthless or said something out of color, and a lot of times it's in jest and it still just misses. I've had to learn not to do that as I've gotten older. But some people are just ruthless
Out of
to no
sport.
ends.
Yeah.
Just to be ruthless.
Exactly.
And if you're one of them, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's not cool. Not cool at all.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that, I had to seriously kind of pull back during the campaign and go, is this worth it? What my wife is being subjected to. And I asked her, I said, if you want me to pull out, if this is getting too much, let me know. She's like, it's not.
Right.
She's like, Josh, keep doing what you're doing. I'll be fine.
It's funny you say that. One of my friends saw one of my campaign signs out. I'm just running for precinct chair, and sent a picture of it, and then impose, Zach for this or Zach for that. And I said, I could never do that to my daughter.
Right.
Because they were like, representative or governor. I'm like, there's no chance I would do that to my daughter just because of what you're talking about.
Exactly. Most people don't know, what the behind the scenes can really entail. The scrutiny. The baptism by fire.
Yeah,
so to
absolutely.
say,
A lot of fire.
And we made it through. We actually, I didn't think I was going to win, Zach. I thought, okay, I'm just, I'm out here, I'm rattling a saber, hey,
Out here hustling.
yeah, we're doing what we got to do. And that's kind of like I told my wife in the very beginning. I'm like, the worst thing that I'm looking at, and I'm going to meet a lot of good people, and that was my intention. I wasn't like, okay, yeah, but you always do things to win. You're running to win.
Absolutely.
I just wasn't expecting it,
Right.
Because I was not, the right person for the job,
Right.
in other people's opinions. That were,
Yeah, according to everybody else.
yeah, according to that. And so that's where it gets really interesting. So after we win, I was like, all right, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
They're going to open up the city hall. You're going to get the full tour. You're going to get, it's like, dude, you're on the outside. It's like,
Yeah, they're going to put you on the bench.
there were a couple of council members that were there that did reach out, and I definitely don't want to overlook those.
Right.
But there were several.
That's okay. He's coming in.
I was like, we got an observer.
Hold on one second. Let me. Okay, we're back. We had an unexpected visitor, but that's okay. Anyway, continue on, Josh. I appreciate it.
So again, I was kind of throwing us back into what happened next after we won, and I don't think I gave you or the listeners a timeline on this.
Right.
This was all in 2009 when all
Okay.
this was taking place.
Okay.
So it came on the council in 2010 was when we took office. And now you would think that would have been, like I said, kind of a smooth transition into there.
Right.
Well, no, it wasn't.
Right.
And that was kind of when I got my real first dose of, tough nose politics.
Right.
This is, where they talk about the meat grinder and everything else. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, you can't make this stuff up.
Right.
So the first thing I get told by, a city manager at the time was that, we would rather you not vote on anything. I was like, well, I bet you would. And I was
What
like,
a crazy statement.
crazy statement. You can't, like I say, you can't make this up. And I was like, so what's your logic behind that?
Yeah.
They're like, well, because we think that there's going to be some conflicts with you being a council member. I said, huh. And it was kind of like, well,
Conflicts.
and he left it as like, well, you'll find out shortly. Oh, yeah, it didn't take long. They say government doesn't move very fast. Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it happens real fast.
And this happened really fast. I found out at the time we had a state representative named Stephen Frost.
Yeah.
And some people from Texarkana, Texas that were, not happy that at the time that, here who's this guy and how to get here?
Right.
So they had reached out to Frost to launch an ethics investigation.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my first welcome to City Hall was,
because how dare somebody that, remember everybody, had the equipment that just wanted to stop water from flowing onto their property and under their property.
Exactly.
How dare you come in and mess up the system?
True. And so I'm thinking, what have I done? I haven't done anything to constitute, a legislative ethics investigation. Well, I'm confused.
Right.
And then I find out that not only that, but the Attorney General's been contacted. And I was like, oh, wow. So now the Attorney General's opened up an investigation as well, the AG's office. And I'm going, wow, what in the world? So they dig up and say, here's where I found that very interesting, is they found that since I worked for the city of Texarkana, Arkansas, but I live in Texas, and I ran for city council on the Texas side.
Right.
But I was still employed by the city of Arkansas as a firefighter. They found that back in 1996 that the city of Texarkana, Arkansas had given their firefighters parity pay with the city of Texarkana, Texas.
Okay.
Because they wanted to keep, and in their logic is that folks would just be jumping back and forth from one city to the other, like, oh, they're getting, 25 cents more an hour over there. We're going to, it doesn't, I think there's more loyalty than that in the fire service, or there was then.
Right.
But they enacted parity pay. So that's what the whole basis on they're not wanting me to cast a vote when I first got elected was they said, here's where, this could become a problem. Is that we don't think that you should be able to serve because in the position you're in, you could vote for the Texas side fire department to get a pay raise. In effect, give yourself a pay raise. I was like, that's insane.
And what a reach.
They were reaching very hard. And so they're like, and if you start voting on matters right now, and we find out that, it's unethical and the AG doesn't think that you're capable of serving, every vote could be questioned and thrown out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is
that's
insane.
wild.
So we knuckled down. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. That's what the people elected me to do.
Yeah, I'm voting, baby.
I'm voting. I'm here, and it's on you guys to figure it out. But I feel like I'm duly elected to do my job and represent my ward.
Yeah.
And I said, we'll deal with this ethics and we'll deal with AG. And, 6 months of my life was consumed with basically, having a microscope on every little thing that I'd done. And funny thing is, came back. Ethics was dropped. They were like, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
And then the AG, which is our current governor at the time, was the AG. And he was like, I'll give an opinion on this. He said, I'll absolutely give an opinion. He's like, it's two different cities, two different states.
Yeah.
The gentleman, it has no bearing on what parity is. He's paying taxes in this city. He lives here, He can represent all he wants, and all of his votes will be valid.
Right.
So that was my indoctrination or introduction.
Got the hard way.
We talk about baptized by fire, and it was one of those where you'd better get in there and you'd better learn it, and you better do it quick at warp speed. And because I could just hear my dad the whole time when he found out I was doing this, he's like, no, you don't want to do that.
Right.
I was like,
this can be a hard road to hoe.
Yeah. And he's like, you're going to embarrass the family on this. And I'm like, hey, no, I'm not going to do. But
you have to be convicted that it's where you're supposed to be.
You do 100%. We stayed prayed up. We did everything we could.
Well, that's everything.
It is
prayed up.
That was the only thing, at times that when you feel like you're walking through, the gauntlet there, that it was like, oh wow, okay. So that was how I got involved in my first run for office.
Right.
And 2 years later I was challenged, because it was still, I don't think they were used to
you
a
versus
person
them.
like me at the time, And so we fought off a challenger, defended our seat, and started working on things. There were some big projects at the city. Right. We had to get the budget under control. We had to get spending under control. We had to do a lot of things that, weren't nice, but
had to happen.
It had to happen. I know I'm going tomorrow to speak, with the Patriot Group.
Uh-huh.
One thing that I've never done since being in office is I've never made promises because I don't know what the future holds.
Right.
But the one thing it is I've been doing it. And I read somewhere that, they're like, well, he just kept getting reelected. I was like, yeah, that's happened. But I kind of think that maybe we're doing something right.
Yeah.
If they're reelecting us. Yeah. You know, I never make promises, but I will say that I have a record that is able to be tracked.
Right.
And they can see my voting record on budgets and taxes for the 10 years.
And that's what matters.
That's what matters. Zach, I hate taxes. I mean, I write a check every year right now because I've invested and diversified.
Yep.
And I write one to the appraisal district, and I trust me when I tell you I don't like writing
property taxes, man.
It's terrible. But the one thing I'm not going to do is lock myself into a corner and go, I will never, because I do not know what situations.
Which is a logical stance.
Yes.
I don't like taxes.
I don't.
Like where they are. I wish there were less, but we have to see. We do have things we have to
look
fund.
at everything.
I mean, I'm a no property tax guy, but also we need a plan to get away from it. You can't just drop it.
No.
I mean, or you could. But then what?
What? Yeah. We
gonna do?
All like things like
Fire.
Streets and
there's a way we pay for all of these things.
Exactly.
And so now if you could bring something, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you're saying. So anyway, we go from city council.
Yeah, we went from city council and
excuse me.
I did that for stayed on there for 10 years. And we like I say, we got a lot of things accomplished during the time. There were some major projects. One of the big things was our water rights.
Right.
We had found out that we didn't own all the rights out there to Wright Patman and the core and those were things that everybody's concerned now about. The Metroplex needs water. If you're not on your P's and Q's, they're going to come take it away from you.
Right.
And so we were like, oh man, we've got to shore up.
Make sure we own our water.
Make sure that we own our water.
Yeah.
Because that's huge.
Which that whole Metroplex thing is going to tie into our water, but I mean that's coming.
It's coming, and it's the way that I look at it is that it's kind of like I go back to the farming, and it's like, okay, we've got an abundance of water here, and that water has a value on it.
That's right.
As long as we're in control, it's kind of like having the cow that makes the milk. And it's like, I'll sell you the milk from my cow all day long, but I'm not selling you my cow.
That's exactly right.
And so I think that's the way we were looking at it from, city's perspective is that, this is our water. We need to make sure that we own all the rights to it and nobody can come take it away from us, or a state agency or anybody else that says, need versus demand. And, no, this is ours.
This is our water.
One of the proud moments was like making sure that we had shored that up for just the future of all of Bowie County and Miller County. And so that was one of the big, as I look back on, what did we accomplish? We did, many smaller projects throughout the city and ward, but it's like, what's going to have an everlasting, that you can say that you were part of. And that was one of the things that, for the next generations to come, that now we have done the hard thing and you bought those rights. And it's like, if we'd have purchased them 30 years ago, it would have been a lot less than what it was when we had to do it at the time. But
just like, I was talking to somebody the other day about buying gold and silver and the price. Like, well, if I'd have bought it then, I'm like, but here we are now, and you're going to say that again in 10 years.
Exactly.
It's the
same cycle there.
Yeah.
And so, but during that time, the last 4 years that I was on city council is they have a position, which is, they call it mayor pro tem. And so it's basically the assistant mayor. You can fill in, whenever the mayor has obligations or duties elsewhere, and what's cool about that though, is that you're actually voted mayor pro tem by your peers, your fellow council members.
People that were against you when you first got there.
Right. And so the last 4 years I served as mayor pro tem, which I thought, boy, look how things have changed. But, a lot of things do change over the years.
Absolutely.
And it's like, things I felt. Dad always taught me, leave things better than you found them.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of where I was at that. After 10 years of being on the council, a full decade, and I look back and I'm going, things are way better than
Made a difference.
Made a difference. And that was one of the things that, with the service and giving back and everything that your parents instill in you is,
right.
And I felt like that was great. During that time, though, while on the council, I wanted to learn everything I could while I was there. I want to learn everything about how that they're taxing, what they're doing, how this is all working. And so when an opportunity came up that there was a position on the appraisal district board.
Right.
And it was a
back
city.
to property taxes.
Exactly. And I'm like, you know what? I need to learn more about this. And so I kind of, like, hey, is anybody else interested in serving on the council appointment? And not a lot of takers for that. And I was like, how about I go out there and check things out? So I got the appointment as the council member to go out there. At the time, it was a 5-member board of the appraisal district. And I wasn't sure what I was getting into, Zach. I was like, I'm just kind of here to learn. I don't know what we do as board members, but I quickly learned that it's very, very limited scope of what you can do as a board member on the appraisal district.
Right.
Basically, you can hire and fire collectively a chief appraiser, and basically you get to approve the budget.
Well, that's Mike Brower, isn't it?
It is. It is. And so that's pretty much the extent of what a board member can do. And then you find out that, it's kind of a, high class misdemeanor that if you try to influence, the board on any direction of the appraisals or tax rates, or not the board, the staff.
Right.
So any board member that mentions, I think y'all are a little bit off on the values in this neighborhood.
Right.
All they've got to do is report you. And, that's,
Isn't that interesting?
You've gotten yourself in a jam, a sticky widget there.
So they can do what they want to do, and oversight's a broad term for something.
Well, there is quite a bit of oversight, but that's just kind of the, as a board member, you've got to be cognizant that, there's boundaries. You've definitely got boundaries. But I learned about the oversight while I was on that. And there is quite a bit. The comptroller's office basically is the one that has all the oversight over your appraisal districts.
Okay.
So that's where they actually go through. They have they call it MAPS review, methods and practices. They've got to meet certain matrices, performance. They come in and they check, what are the surrounding values and how are they doing comparables to other counties. And as long as they're within a certain margin, things are going to be okay.
Right.
But who sets that? That's coming from the state.
Yeah.
And so I've always found it kind of entertaining when you've got people in Austin that say, we've lowered your taxes. Yeah, but did you go over there and tell the comptroller to raise the values?
Right. That's exactly right.
I'm not accusing anybody of doing any of that.
I'll accuse them. That's what. We're not raising property taxes, but your value went up.
All right.
So now you pay more taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you didn't help me at all.
So it's interesting. So that was kind of where I was cutting my teeth on learning about how that, how the property ad valorem taxes were, collection side of it. All of that was right in there. And so I want to say it was about 8 years that I sat on that board while being a council member.
Okay.
And of course, that when you look at the amount of collections that come in just on property alone, and, board members as well as the chief appraiser and director of collections over there, it's their fiduciary responsibility, and that's where all that started coming in as far as the accountability goes. And we're talking $300 million a year in excess in property taxes that are flowing through. And most people are just amazed when they think about how much Bowie County, and I'm like, that's big. That's big time.
Right. That's a big number.
We're not Tarrant County or Dallas County.
No,
but for Northeast Texas,
for a county of 100,000 people or a little less.
That's right. And so, yeah, we definitely had to go through several, like I say, there were several agencies that would come in. You had your own in-house audit, you had your outside audit done. Those things, the accountability was there. So as far as knowing, people always go, yeah, we hate our taxes, but you've got to know that they're not being misappropriated as they're being collected.
Right.
That may happen further down the chain there.
It might happen somewhere, but not at the collection.
It's not going to do that there.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of wraps up to where we lead to today.
Which is running for county judge.
Well, and in between then, I became the tax assessor collector.
Right.
So
Yep, that's right.
that was the in between is that, I thought I was getting out of City Hall, and it was like, some people had, they knew that I had a background, and they're like, he's been at the appraisal district. He's been mayor pro tem. They made him chairman of the board at the appraisal district.
Right.
He's learned all about how the checks and balances work, and he's been fairly good at doing it. And so there were some people that came to me and they said, what would you think about running for tax assessor collector for the county? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just not one of those childhood dreams that I had growing up. It was like,
Just a guy that wanted to fix his driveway.
that's how it all started, and here we are. And I was like, well, let me, think about it. Let me talk to my wife. Let me pray about this, and get back with you on it. And I talked to her and talked to my daughter, and my daughter's like, the tax assessor collector, really? She's like, you heard the story about Zacchaeus, and I'm like, that comes to mind, wee little guy. And I was like, I'm like, yeah. And she's like, that's part of the two oldest professions in the Bible there. And I was like, yeah, you're right, Laura. Leave it to her. She's going to call out on everything. But we looked at it, and I was like, you know what? I think I could be useful. I think, and it had come, just the timing was really kind of coincidental. I retired after 20 years of fire service in 2019. So I did my 20 years. Would have loved to have stayed longer, but the knees and the shoulders were saying otherwise.
Right, different game, yeah.
Different game. That's a young man's game, I'll add, especially if you're still riding as firefighter on there, which I was. But, I was like, okay, let's really explore this and see what's out there. And we ultimately, we decided, we'd give it a go. We'd run against, the incumbent that was there. I felt like it was, amicable as far as the campaign, at least on our side of it.
Yeah, as far as you could be, right?
Yeah, as far as we could be. And that was a different campaign and running a county-wide.
Right.
That was my first. I went from a little bitty, ward in the city to now all of a sudden we're covering the entire county.
And Bowie County is a large geographic area.
It is huge.
Yeah.
It is huge. When I tell people, I'm like, you can literally start at state line just on I-30 and drive. If you're driving the speed limit for an hour, and you're still going to be in Bowie County.
And the speed limit is 75 miles an hour for most of that stretch.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah.
Huge county. So that was interesting. Got to meet a lot of more new and interesting people. Made a lot more friends.
Right.
And we won that election. And then it was like, all right, now just forget everything that you've ever known. And you're going to start a completely different job because, being the tax assessor collector has absolutely zero to do with collecting property taxes.
Right.
and people still to this day get that confused because, for the 5+ years that I was a tax assessor collector, it never failed. Every time that statements would come out, my phone would start ringing. They're like, what are you doing over here, Davis? You running up our tax? And I'm like, no, dude, that wasn't me.
That had nothing to do with it.
Wrong guy. Now, do you have a DMV problem? I'm your guy.
That's right.
So that's what I walked into. It's like, you're
the guy in the Robin Hood cartoon going around hitting the coin, taking the money. And all that was the sheriff. It's a completely different person.
It's many different hats in Texas that people wear. So we jumped into DMV, and I was like, oh my goodness. There's DMV, there's Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Alcohol and Beverage Control. Those were all under the purview or the scope of the tax assessor collector.
And that DMV office, let me tell you, in the time that you were there at the Texas, that office changed.
It did. It had to.
I mean, because, and I'll just say this, I remember I knew there was a change happening. It was before 2019. I walked in one time, and there's the take the slip, take your number, and all that. And there's nobody there. Okay, and so I just walk up to the counter, and the lady goes, "You need to take a number." I said, "Ma'am, there's nobody here." Mm-hmm. She goes, "You need to take a number." So I'm a bit of a smart aleck, so I go back, pull mine. Let's say it was 86 or whatever, and then it's at like, if I'm 86, it's at like 79. So she starts hitting them and counting them. 79,
You're
80,
looking around
and I'm looking around like, we're really gonna do this. 81, 82. I'm like,
yep.
I mean, we're rigid, right? And I am getting aggravated. But I'm like, okay, if I make these people mad, I'm here all day. I'm going to have to go back for 17 different things I don't have. Like, I'm telling myself, Zach, you got to stay calm right here, baby. Just hold it together. 85. She gets to 80, 86. I look, and she looks at me. She knows I'm 86.
Right.
I look around, look at my tag, look at the number. I'm like, I take a good solid 60 seconds, which is forever. She goes, "Is this you?" I'm like, "I'm just verifying that nobody else is coming." And it was a contentious, but anyway, so then from that to now, I went and got some tags done, I don't know, in the last 6 months or so. Hit the drive through.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot more.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. And just, man, that's great. Here's my stuff. Here you go. Thanks. Have a good day. But I mean, it's a completely different office down there from, and I knew that was during your time that transition, it happened, and it's markedly different.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That's what we want to hear right there. That's exactly what we want to hear. That was what I campaigned on was customer service,
right,
and accountability. And that's what we've tried to do. And as far as staying in budget, doing all these things too, and we've managed to do that. I mean, I think if you walked in from 5 years ago to let's just say the office downtown, Texarkana 601.
Yep.
If you'll remember how the place it kind of, and I'm not trying to be ugly or me. The place needed a facelift.
Absolutely.
It was kind of nasty. You know, I was like, man, we could sure, spray this thing down with some Lysol and do some good. And we painted the inside walls that they needed done. We changed up some flooring in there that needed to be changed out. You made it. It's kind of like, I felt it was our obligation to the taxpayer, to try to give them a better experience.
And you did.
That was our goal.
And I've even talked to other people. Like, you don't think that going to the DMV is something that you talk about. But the running joke was, get whatever you think you're going to need, plus a bunch of stuff you don't think you're going to need.
Yes.
And then, but I've had this conversation because we have, farm trailers and all the things. You just have stuff, campers and boats and
all over side by sides.
Yeah, that's right. All the things that you have to have licenses for. And so, just in talking, I mean, this is a real conversation I have because hey, it's not near as hard to go down there.
That's been the whole goal, setting out. And of course, we had to come a long way to get to where we were. First of all, we had to do some bookkeeping.
Right.
We had to get there. Had been
it always goes back to numbers.
It goes back. I wanted, when I took over and put my name on it, I wanted a clean book. I was like, if something's screwed up, then it's going to screw up on me from this point on. Right. And I don't want anything on me. And so, we found a lot of things, that it
back on right now. So we lost internet, everybody, but we're back anyway. But we had some good conversation about how you turn around a place, man. just once again down there at that office,
Oh my gosh.
it just drastically different from the outside. And we were going through some of my history and managing P&Ls and all that, and there's just a lot to making. If you're going to turn a cruise ship or a battleship, it doesn't just spin on the dime.
That's right. It takes a little bit of time and a whole lot of effort.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'll share with you quickly, I know we're kind of running short on time this morning, because I do, if you give me a microphone or let me have a chance to talk, I'm going to talk until you go, be quiet. And
if we're doing this for people to get to know you, that's what we are. And
that's what we're trying to do.
And our mystery guest in the studio now, he doesn't have a problem with it. Yeah, old retired guy,
That's it.
That's right.
But so we went from the worst office where they set us up in regions. And so we were the Northeast Texas region that for our county, and basically our regional headquarters was Longview.
Okay.
A lot of things run out of Longview, Tyler, Longview area for our neck of the woods up here.
Right.
And so it was to the point to when I walked in and we would have to call the regional office for, question or help. We need, they had caller ID, Zach, and they saw it was Bowie, and they'd be like, not today.
Didn't want to deal with it.
We don't even want to deal with you guys.
Yeah.
So we went from that office to just before this last year, we won one of the top honors in the state for basically a tax assessor collector's office.
That's awesome.
So we went from the bottom of the barrel to we won the Driven to Serve award, and there were only 11 other offices in the state that won that this year.
Out of how many?
254 counties.
Just so everybody knew. It's not like 11 out of 12.
No. Out of all of the counties, and that made us the first in our region in all of Northeast Texas to get that designation. And of course, that's they come in and they don't just pass these things out.
Right.
You've got to meet all the criteria. Your audits have to be perfect. You've got to have fraud, waste, and abuse programs that are in place. And again, it's just it's not just let's go get this. And a lot of things had to actually happen and make sure that they were done right. And that leads us to kind of one of the things that Trina, who's replacing me right now, Trina McIntyre was my chief deputy, and she's now the current tax assessor collector. The commissioner's court appointed her when I resigned to run for this office. And so some of the things that we had been working on was a new queuing system. And I can tell that you like technology, and I like technology, and it
doesn't like me though.
It doesn't like me either, and not that great. That's a funny thing, because when I took office as tax assessor, that was right after we got ransomwared.
Oh, okay.
So, that's a whole nother, we could do a whole nother segment on that.
Don't click the links, everybody. Whatever you do, don't click that link.
Absolutely not. And but so we've invested in a queuing technology. It's called Nemo Q. And actually, I'm not going to say that the taxpayers spent a dime on it, because it was a citizen that made a donation
to be able to upgrade,
to be able to bring us out of the dark ages. And just like you'd mentioned earlier about the paper ticket to have to pull, I was like, there's got to be something better out there. There's got to be something better.
I wanted to reach across that counter.
Exactly. So that's what we have now. So we've got a new queuing system that integrates into our state computers, where you can actually now online, you can make a reservation and an appointment online. And it
only makes sense.
We literally at the tax office now have SMS messaging, like if you're getting a reservation at Roadhouse, and it's like you can sit in your car until it tells you, now come on inside and go see deputy number 3.
And just walk in there. And
you walk in there and you've already pre-filled out everything. It's like I'm doing a renewal. And so you're already halfway through. So what would have taken you 5 minutes is now going to take you a minute and a half, because that deputy's seeing what you've already populated on there. And it's like, all right, it's going to be $74, sir. Have a great evening.
And there you go.
In and out.
And just like I said, just to see the turnaround of that office, and we hadn't got into kind of what we were talking about while we were waiting for the internet to reboot, but my background, which most people listening don't know my background in numbers, and if you don't control your numbers, you have your whole so just watching your turnaround, I can only imagine, and I've had this conversation with people. I can only imagine the amount of numbers that went into seeing the outside change, because the outside change is but a small portion of what actually has to happen to make that visible to the public. So. So I'm excited. All right, let's get into
that leads up to where we are today. Is we're running for county judge, and that was
well. And let me say this: from where we've gone from, you being a volunteer fire department, a fire department member, to working on the farm, to then growing, then investing in the farm with your dad, to growing that part of the business, to being a firefighter, to, hey, city, I've got a problem with my drainage.
Yes.
And you're not going to allow me to fix it with my own backhoe, but you're saying you don't, to running for city council, to then the city council blackballing you.
Oh yeah, we get
to calling the attorney general in on you to try to not to let you be in the city council. To then tax assessor collector to the. Okay, so here we are.
Yeah,
running for another one.
We're here.
But if your attention to detail will be for the county, what it has been so far,
absolutely,
it can only be beneficial for our county. The way I see it,
I hope so. I hope a lot of other people can see that. Is that I'm putting myself out there, Zach. I'm like, you can read my history here like a book if you know where to look. And a lot of people do. They know how to go back and go through the archives and go through the minutes and see everything that we've done. And that's the one thing about it, is the attention to detail that I'm going to give to the county. And there's several challenges that are facing the county. And
what would you say the two biggest are coming up in your mind?
There's one thing that we've got to constantly be vigilant about is another BRAC.
Right.
That's one thing that crops up from time to time, and it gets on their radar in DC, and we've got to do everything we can to protect the Red River Army Depot, and of course all the supporting industry that goes with it right here. That would cripple this county if anything like that ever.
And so I often am the contrarian in this. I believe in what the Red River Army Depot does. However, I worry about waste inside of that, and waste of the funds, and waste of the time. And look, I catch a lot of hell on when I say anything bad about it. But there's waste, and I've talked to investigators from there, if the IGs from inside that are like,
we can just go back and look at the old Gazette articles on so many people that have gone and serving some prison time that were involved in some nefarious activities
and just equipment. You're a farmer. Just equipment that's sitting out there that's billions of dollars.
Exactly.
While these jobs do help, and I'm not trying to be negative, but so if BRAC is our worry, we have to show that we're productive and that we're efficient in order to stymie that. Is what I was getting at.
I can see that. That's a good point. And I think you're going to deal with that. When you start talking about some of the big problems, and that's going to be way out of the scope of
what you do,
of a county judge. That are coming from DC.
But you're going to have an influence on it for sure.
Hopefully so. As far as fighting to try to keep those jobs here, that's going to be that. Like I say, within the scope of the county judge. As far as what goes on, that's going to be. Well, as you say, up to the IG and other people.
Absolutely. Well, and that's there. Well, then we've got Ready.
We do,
and I like some of the stuff that's coming to Bowie County.
Exactly.
With Ready, we've got big plans coming for different factories and centers that are. I mean, we're right on the precipice.
We are
of some of that breaking loose. So, and I'm not to put words in your mouth, but I'd like to see our county be more business. Or at least as business friendly, if not more business friendly and attractive to come in. But then we're going to have the water issues that we've got coming and all of that. So And I throw that to you. I know that's a lot. I mean, that's 3 hours worth of conversation right there.
It is. But it goes back to, even when I discussed about the days on the council, is building towards that today by securing those water rights.
Right.
And that was gearing up for the future. Little did I know at the time that, one day I might be a county judge while we were securing the water rights, so that we could attract, more industry.
Right.
And not only that, but, I think as a county judge, you also have to look at kind of like what I was talking about with BRAC. BRAC goes along with retention.
Yes.
We've got to retain, some of the industry that we have too, as well as attracting.
Yeah, you got your paint and blast companies and all these companies that are out there, and
definitely
that you definitely need to keep. Well, and even as far as from like Texas County water utilities, you've got your lack of westward expansion due to processing. Right. So I mean, and I know you're in on that.
Oh yes.
And so I mean, we have to be able to process sewage
exactly
in order to continue to grow.
We do. We 100% do. And so yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that I look forward to being involved with. And there's more challenges.
Right.
That you were like, what are some of the biggest things facing Bowie County right now? And I think if you had the sheriff come in one day.
He's coming in Friday.
Oh, well,
Jeff, Sheriff
Jeff,
Neal,
This is going to be right up his alley. There's going to have to be a conversation brought up about the jail.
Yeah. Oh, he's honking that horn.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. So that's going to be interesting.
And then when we get to, okay, are we getting rid of property taxes? Well, how are we funding? There's so much give and take. Well, and then does moving the jail eventually help our downtown? Right. Absolutely, it does.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good conversations.
That was one of the things, when we were on the council, we were like, we can't get people to come into downtown. Because you've got this giant eyesore that's sitting there, with the razor wire and, trying to get people to come in and invest. And, it's actually done quite well despite of it.
Despite having a jail down there.
I would say that the downtown is that was another big project we were involved with is, we, as a council, at one time we were looking at a demolition cost of $5 million to get rid of the Grim. Right. And it was like, where does that money come from? That comes from the taxpayers to demo a building that.
Which you don't want to get me started on the Grim.
Yeah, I know. That's you can go down a bunch of different, but it was like, so they, found the guy that, did this but a lot of federal money went into that.
There you go.
But,
$30 million of federal money went into
it's like, so do we spend $5 million local money
or federal
or, to demo something?
Now it looks beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I just, we don't have time to go
into it. Of it. Absolutely. But that's the jail. And with Jeff coming in, that's going to be right up his alley. He's reached out to me about it a couple of times and I've looked at it, and when you start talking the numbers, it's like, oh my gosh. But that's one of the main. You look at county government, and it's heavy on the judicial side.
Right. Well, even talking to Judge Tidwell, and he says, what's that cost? $45 a day, or something like that per inmate. It's
probably even more now when you start thinking about we have to provide their medical too.
Yeah.
So you get one inmate that comes in, and heaven forbid they have a heart attack.
Right.
And. We know what a trip to the ER costs.
Right.
County's not getting any discounts on that, So
if it's coming from the county can pay it. We're full go. Yeah.
It's they're looking for one of those $100 hammers over there. Let's sell them one. No, we've got to look out for stuff like that. But that's. We have that's right there. We've got, indigent care that we're responsible. A lot of people don't think that these things are under the county scope. And it's like, we've got a lot. We've got to take care of inmates. We've got to provide, law enforcement. It's very heavy on the judicial side and of course, as the county judge, you're responsible for, drafting the county's budget
Right.
every year that goes before the commissioners to vote on, you know. So you're trying to, you know, draft a budget that's going to stay in your tax rate, you know. And that's challenging when you've got all these other departments that are coming to you. You know, you've got these other elected officials, like I say, you know, they're going to have needs. The sheriff's going to come in and he's going to say, you know, Judge, we need a new jail, you know. I'm going to be like, okay, I hear you.
Or just like we did we just had the kitchen remodel at the jail.
Exactly. I mean, I think you were in that meeting.
I was in that meeting.
When that was being discussed. And, you know, it's like, so when do you start? It's like, are we throwing good money after bad? What's the breakover point? You know, it's like we're still putting Band-Aids on this thing. And I've heard, you know, and if it was the kitchen, and then before that, you know, elevators, and then, you know, it's on and on. But we know that this facility that they're in is no longer feasible. I mean, for sustainability.
But once again, it all comes down to how much of that pie can you bite off. Or do you have to just bake a new pie? Or you can't make the pie go away and take away all the funds. And so it's exactly right.
So realistically, the only way to afford one, you know, is a bond issue.
Right.
You know, and of course, so many things come into play on that. You know, what's your county's bond rating? You know, that's kind of like your credit score for the average Joe that doesn't know. And it's like, you know, you're basically borrowing on the, you know, taxpayers' futures here to build something. And I've had this conversation with a couple of other individuals before. You know, I think I told you that my wife is a school teacher and she teaches for Pleasant Grove. They were actually trying to build that elementary school, had gone through 3 different bond elections, and it was finally the third one that the voters said, you know what, we'll give you enough money to build the school.
Right.
Now, people are